I'm Lawrence Francis, host of Interpreting Wine, welcoming you to the Mosaic of Wine Series 1. Giving my audience of wine lovers, students and professionals from across the world access to some of the most interesting, successful and influential people working in and around the world of wine. Series episodes explore the guest's backstory, covering their foundations, growth and legacy, using Interpreting Wine's Mosaic storytelling model. I would love this episode and this series to be the start of a conversation, so please make sure you're subscribed to Interpreting Wine podcast to be alerted when each series episode goes live. We continue the Mosaic of Wine series today in the company of Peter Arijs, Education and Global Projects Manager at Rioja Wine. Peter tells us his origin story and the journey from engineering to wine. We discuss the Belgian wine market. He shares Spanish influences along his career path. We talk blind tasting and the changing face of Rioja, the challenges of a career transition, leading education at Rioja Wine, with a deep dive into content development, the Rioja Camp program, and the growing importance of wine tourism, before discussing the future of Rioja. Enjoy!
I'm indeed a lateral entrant in the world of wine, and I think it's not actually as unusual. As I've been through this journey, I've met some people that are in the same boat. And I worked for almost 20 years in engineering, mostly in the IT world. But about 10, 12 years ago, I think I got interested in wine, in the sense that you're starting to have a little bit of a better life, let's say, go to some nicer restaurants, and you get exposed to wine. And in the beginning, you, as many people that don't have this background in wine, that are not born into a family of wine sellers or makers, it's not something obvious to you, right? So wine is not an easy subject, as we all know. So getting presented by a wine list or being in a wine shop and having to pick a wine is not an easy task for a lot of people. So I knew I liked wine. I wanted to learn more about it. So I took a wine course, like many people do. It was actually something very simple. 6 evenings, learn how to taste wine, it was called. And I took it, and I was really into it. And I had some key moments. I remember like tasting my first dry Riesling was like, for me, a discovery. I didn't know that something like this existed in the world of wine with this intensity and energy and tension, and that just gave me I wanted to learn more. And after those 6 sessions, there was an opportunity to enroll in what was called the sommelier program. So that was like a 3-year course that went on from that. It was also an evening thing. It was not like a full day programs, because I was combining it with my professional life still. Yeah. So at first I just wanted to learn more about wine, to just discover new things, drink better wine, help me pick something I liked, and all those kind of things. And that's how I actually started out in the world of wine. I do think my engineering background helped me in the process. When you study about wine, there's a lot of process involved, both in viticulture, how things are done in the vineyard, also in winemaking, helping. I think my background there helped me to understand that, and also relate things that also in WSET is quite important, like relating the why and the how, where certain taste comes from, or why a certain wine tastes different than another. So I think there my engineering background did help me a little bit. So that was kind of the early days, yes.
Yeah, and absolutely. I totally get that analytical bedrock, I guess, on which a lot of other sort of study and a lot of other exploration can then sit. But I will kind of ask a follow-up question really there, because I know you're originally from Belgium and now based, as we mentioned before, in Rioja in Spain. And I'm just curious, kind of again, looking back now kind of as we are, is there anything that you kind of, I guess, potentially appreciate or recognize in terms of, the Belgian approach to wine? I mean, it always seems quite interesting to me, the size of the market there. And it seems, a very attractive market, I find, for a lot of people that I speak to. So I'm just curious, what are your kind of own reflections on, I guess pathways into wine in Belgium now that you're, a little bit removed from that?
Yes, I think that was something I was actually lucky to be based in a country as Belgium. I think UK has the same kind of environment where you're not really inside a producing country that's very much into its own wines, like is very much the case here in Rioja, I should say. It's actually very hard here to go to a place and get served anything else than Rioja wine. So being exposed to kind of wines from all over the world in the learning process and the discovery process, also just for personal pleasure, that's actually a part of Belgium that I miss. That here, of course, now with internet and so you can order all kind of stuff online, but just going to a restaurant or a wine bar and having a wide selection, easy to access. I think that's something that the Belgian market is inherent to the Belgian market, and we are somewhat of a country that features in the top 10 of export of a lot of regions, like I think in Bordeaux and Champagne, also in Rioja. We are firmly in the top 10, although it's a really small country. So it's in that sense, yes, Belgians do like their wine.
Yeah,
although it's a beer country, really, you could say, but yeah.
I mean, it's great. I mean, I think it's a wonderful thing because, again, we know when there's so much talk around wine consumption is decreasing, and we and I'm guilty of it myself as well. Making these sort of blanket statements. I think there's a risk that we can kind of gloss over sometimes. That hold on, within that bigger picture, there are obvious exceptions. So that might indeed, give others ideas of not only where to sell wine, but again, Belgium is doing something right, and they're having some success in getting new people in and getting people to spend on wine. So it just felt as though, there's potentially something to be learned there, and worthy of, maybe further investigation. Quick one for those of you listening who work with producer groups and wine regions. If you're struggling to break through the noise and communicate your unique story, what you might not know is that Interpreting Wine offers best-in-class marketing services to unlock your unique character and tell your story more effectively. In today's competitive wine storytelling landscape, we've developed a transformative 3-phase approach. Tell better stories, increase event engagement, and activate untapped audiences. Transforming how you connect with your target market and driving measurable business results. We've reached full capacity for client projects with no new engagements until 20th of January 2025. Lock in our 2024 prices before they rise in January. Head to interpretingwine.com/2025 prices, where you can read the full blog and join the waitlist before we close. Now, let's get back to the podcast.
Yeah, if I look at our export statistics of Rioja, it's one of the countries that's still doing quite well. We actually lost not market share, but mostly like sheer volume in a lot of countries, just because of the general trend of worldwide decline in wine consumption. We've kind of held our market position in a lot of countries, but there are a few countries that are still doing quite well. Belgium is one, Canada is one. There are a few others, but it's good to see that there are still a few pockets of growth, let's say.
Yeah. No, amazing. So let's pick up your story then. So you've kind of taken us, I guess, to the door of discovering wine, of again starting to study. You mentioned the WSET. Could you kind of pick up the story and tell us what were the next sort of big meaningful phases in your journey?
Yeah, I didn't get exposed to WSET until I actually finished this sommelier program that I was talking about, right?
Okay.
So this gave me a good basis of wine. It was actually a pure coincidence that one day I attended a wine fair, and there was a competition at the wine fair. You could participate. There were some practical questions. There was a blind tasting, and I won it. And the prize was a pack of wines, also a visit to a winery, and an evening of tasting together with a group of friends. And that was offered by a wine school, local wine school, WineWise, I think I can mention them. I didn't know WineWise, and I started looking at them, and then I discovered like, oh, they do this WSET program. And actually I asked them, well, instead of having an evening with friends hosted by you, can I just take the WSET level 3? They said, yeah, you can do the level 3 if you have the degree that you have already. So I just did that instead. They gave me a nice discount on that, and that's how I got into WSET. I did the 3, and then I was doubting if I should go for diploma, because I was still working full time in another in IT. So and yes, I knew that diploma is a big commitment and is more geared to people from trade. But at that point, I was already starting to think like maybe it's could be something in the future that I want to do a little bit more professional. And so I started the diploma, and actually shortly after I got, while I was in the diploma, I got asked by the sommelier school where I first was a student to start teaching some courses. And so I started combining it at a certain moment. So mostly in my free time, I was studying the diploma, I was teaching, starting to teach a little bit. And little by little, I got more teaching opportunities, and it was until after I finished the diploma, actually. Actually, there was another important. Should take a step back. There was another important inflection point. I was working for a startup. That was kind of my last job in IT. It was a great experience. A young team developing a very interesting software product. But the case is that 99% of startups go bust, right? And so that happened. At a certain moment, things didn't end well. And then I was like midway into my diploma. I still had the big one, D3, coming up. Yeah. And then I told myself, well, actually, I'm just going to take a break from IT now. I'm going to study for this last exam, and then see what I do afterwards. And actually, since that, I've never been back to IT. So it just, I did my diploma, and then I started first working more as a freelancer. So I was combining teaching with, I was also working a bit for an importer that offered me a position to work a few days a week for him, helping to select wine and on the marketing side. Because at the last part of my IT career, I wasn't working all that technical anymore. I was more working in product management and marketing. So I was also able to translate that marketing part to wine. So in a way, yes, it's a big transition from IT to wine, but it sort of happened gradually. And then the other big change was really moving here. So that's kind of, you could say there were 3 phases, like the initial phase, like more getting to learn about it just as kind of an amateur. Then the second phase, which I just described, where I was getting a bit, was starting to work in it as a freelance and combining a few things. And then the final part was really ending up here in Rioja, which was also a bit of a coincidence, you could say, because Rioja has this program, which is called Certified Educator Program, that I'm now running myself. But I actually went through it myself in 2018. So I already had this strong link with Spain, because my wife is actually Spanish. She's from Bilbao. So we already came here a lot when we were still living together in Belgium. And that way I was already exposed to Rioja, and actually was doing also some kind of agent work for a few wineries here. Yeah. And that also got me interested in the Certified Educator Program. So I went through the program and everything. And I remember one day, about 3 years ago, I sent an email to the person that was having my job here before, just asking also for some opportunities to work together. And I got like an auto reply, like, I'm not longer working here. If you have any questions, please contact my manager. So I wrote to the manager, asked the same question. Hey, I'm one of the certified educators. Would like to know if there's some ways we can work together in the Belgian market or what have you. And he said, well, actually I have a job opening here. So if you're interested to work in Spain, we can talk about it. And it happened at the time that my wife was also interested in returning to Spain, and we were really considering it as a family. Also, her parents are getting a little bit older. So all that came together, and well, the opportunity just worked out. I had to go through some interviews and stuff like that, but in the end, they selected me. And I think one of the reasons they selected me is also because I have this more international profile. They were actually, so getting back to your previous question, a lot of people here in Rioja are very local, and they know a lot about what's going on here, but to translate that internationally is sometimes a bit of a challenge, and that's, I think, one of the reasons that I ended up here, and that's been 2.5 years ago that I've been here, and so far I'm enjoying it. It's a really great region to work for. I'm very happy that they are committed to this investment in education. I think it's important for a wine region like Rioja to do this kind of work. And that's basically the story of how I ended up here.
Yeah, no, I love it. And of course, I'm, as anyone listening will know, and you know, I'm a huge fan of all things Spanish, and really love the Rioja region, and I've been on a number of occasions. But something in a sense, I'm curious. I did know before sort of turning on the mic that there are sort of other, perhaps cultural influences really that have kind of shaped your approach to wine. I mean, you've already mentioned your Spanish wife and the visiting. I'm sure that's also been an influence from the very start. But you also mentioned things like the blind tasting subculture, as you called it, and even the influence of things like podcasts and media. Could you tell us maybe more about those bigger influences really? Again, sort of maybe seed them in the story if we're needing to sort of go back a little bit in time before your current position.
Yeah, blind tasting is something that I've always very much enjoyed, and it's also kind of putting a bit to work my engineering brain to kind of dissecting a wine, right? Yeah. Once you get to learn how to taste a little bit, and you get taught this analytical process to it, the SAT as they call it, in WSET. But I've also looked at like the grid that master sommeliers used. So I've looked into this, and I read books about it, and it's something that it's fun, but it's also helpful because it helps you understand wine and its components. So I've always enjoyed doing that, and we kind of started getting together with some like-minded people, did some blind tasting, some blind tastings for fun, and then I even engaged in some competitions. So in 2021, I won the best Belgian blind taster competition. That's it's always something I've enjoyed. I've been trying to get into the big blind tasting here in Spain. There's like a blind tasting competition that takes place annually. You have to participate in pairs, and the grand prize is 30,000 euros. But it's very hard to get into because you just have to subscribe very quickly, apparently. But hopefully one day I would like to do that. Blind tasting is something I've always enjoyed, and it's actually also something I created a little business around. That was quite fun around the time of COVID. I was already teaching at that time in wine, and suddenly everybody was at home. There was no more opportunity to do these blind tastings together, and there were a lot of people that were interested in my group of students or something. So very quickly, I think in the first few months of COVID, together with a friend and also teacher of wine and also a very good blind taster, Stijn Verleijen, we started this online mystery tasting initiative. And basically we sent people a pack of wines and we packaged them all so that nobody could see what they were. And then we had like an online session and we said like, okay, now you have to open wine number one. And then it was with an interactive tool that the people had to vote what they thought the different components of the wine were, how do you see the acidity in this wine, which fruit do you have, and then getting to kind of guessing which grape variety and where the wine was from. And that was also good fun. I think at a certain moment, even in a small country as Belgium, we had 60 people participating. And in the end, it was getting like a busy job because like collecting all this wine and packaging it and selling it out, and we even started working with somebody to do it for us after a while. That's blind tasting. I still enjoy doing it, but as I'm saying, it's harder here actually because people here are a little bit more into Spanish wine, and every time it's actually interesting because Rioja is so diverse that oftentimes when we're tasting with people that are a little bit more into blind tasting, the first question is always like, could it be from here? Could it be a Rioja? And in the beginning, when I was just getting exposed to wine, Rioja is kind of a relatively easy wine to blind taste, right? Certainly, if you
do you call it the classic Rioja? Is that a way to talk about it, or am I not allowed to call it that?
Yeah, I think that's fine. That's acceptable. Classic Rioja. So like what people know, the Reserva, Gran Reserva style, or even a Crianza, something that's seen some American oak often, although it's not always the case. There's also a lot of French oak used here. But already with a little bit of evolution on it, so a bit of bottle aging as well. So those classic wines, those are fairly easy to recognize in a blind tasting, I would say, because they're also they have a certain stylistic element to it, the oak and the evolution, and then the profile of Tempranillo, which is also quite different than some other grape varieties you could confuse it with. So that's kind of an easy wine to blind taste if you just stick to classic Rioja. But once you dive a little bit deeper in Rioja, you find that there's so much more, right? We have 14 grape varieties here. There are monovarietals made out of each and every one of them. There's a lot of people that are not using any oak, that are, and even not stainless steel. There's people using amphora. There's people using concrete tanks and things like that. And then you have people that are really starting to explore specific zones, vineyards at altitude, single vineyard expressions, village expressions. So that's kind of the fun part about Rioja, which also makes it a very interesting region to have an educational program around, because there's a lot there. There's a lot of meat to the bone. There's a lot you can explain and talk about. But even then, yes, sometimes I'm even having a wine that's a Rioja that I wouldn't have put in Rioja, because you can have like a really fresh, high altitude white wine here that most people wouldn't immediately put in Rioja.
Yeah. It's getting more difficult to pick out then if we draw from the great diversity that's there. And I think also, because again, I know I do have a lot of listeners who are blind tasters, be that for exams or be that as part of their work. And I think you mentioned something earlier, which I found very interesting, was that, it sounded as though you're fairly kind of agnostic, really, in your blind tasting approach, that you will actually borrow from the WSET or the Court of Master Sommeliers, or whoever's got the information there you want to read, you want to sort of build that together. And would you say that has been a critical part, that kind of analytical and a kind of synthesis, let's say, has been sort of, your secret, if you like, or at least a big factor in, again, being a very successful blind taster?
Well, I think it's a lot of practice involved, and it's also finding your own approach. I think I've indeed, like you say, borrowed elements from different things that worked for me, and also listen to podcasts like the Guildson podcast, where they also do a lot of these blind tastings and read different books. So you just construct your own method with. I mean, it's always going to be the same, right? There's these three phases, and color can already tell you a little bit of give you an indication. Then aromas put you further in a direction, but then there's also always the danger of not getting too stuck into a certain direction to kind of holding to wait your final conclusion until you taste it. So bringing everything together, but yeah, there are little nuances, little aromas that stick with you, for example, that you put on a specific grape variety or style. So I think that's been the key. It's been practice and being interested in it and looking at different sources and taking elements from that, really.
Yeah, it's great. And again, I think it naturally kind of comes out, because again, I know how in just about every wine region of the world, but I know Spain. I know how sort of proud people are of the local wine production there, and it wasn't actually in Rioja, but I remember one time I was actually in La Mancha, and I ordered a Galician wine. I was just really in the mood for a Godello or something sort of crisp and sharp, and if looks could kill from the waiter, I think it was pretty much made very clear to me that we're in La Mancha, so you're going to be drinking La Mancha wines, and why not? I think that's of course great to be proud of what's been made, and again, there is diversity there, but I also think that even when you it's almost like, zooming out even again and going up to, another sort of 10,000 feet in the wine world, things like Tokai, where I know you've had some success winning the Royal Tokai Award. And, there's just so much more, isn't there, when you look outside of a region, of a country. And that, I think, is what makes wine this infinite game, really. It's, I think, a game that we'll all be playing for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, that's. I remember when I was doing these tastings and I had my calendar. It's like a little anecdote, but I had my calendar shared with my wife, and one day we were doing a Syrah tasting, and she looked at my calendar and she said, like, so now you're going to taste also all the grapes of the world? You can go forever. You can go on forever this way. And I was like, yeah, you're pretty much right.
Exactly. And then getting started on the sweet wines and the sparkling. Yeah, I'm sure.
So it's a never-ending world, and that's fun. And again, I think that's it's good to have this wider perspective. Of course, I think at least that was my feeling. At the end, you have to put it to purpose and also choose kind of a specialization or where do you want to take it, right? And in my case, I've always had this interest of Rioja, which was kind of the closest region also from where we typically went in Spain, and had the opportunity to discover it more and now to work here. But even as a specialist in a certain area, I think it's usually been beneficial to have some general knowledge of other regions and what's going on in the world, definitely.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Okay, and I would actually, I think, it all has sounded like it's sort of been, very kind of, a lot of hard work, a lot of, synthesis, and again, bringing those skills from IT, from engineering, and bringing kind of all the qualifications together. But one thing that, I think, again, would help some of the listeners, and I think, may be interesting to even reflect on now in your kind of current position, are really some of the challenges, really, I guess, along the way, challenges on the journey, and really related to that transformation, let's say, because again, before we started recording, you spoke of maybe some of the uncertainty of leaving a comfortable career, and certainly somewhere where you were able to have a steady, and you had the track record, if you like, and even you mentioned sort of imposter syndrome, even sort of in some of those early years. So could you maybe expand on a bit more about some of the challenges you faced and how you overcame them on the path to your current role?
It's something I've indeed struggled with in the beginning, because you're highly educated in a specific field, and you're doing quite well. You're making a good living. So from the outside world, it might look strange to, and even for yourself, to kind of make this career switch, right?
Yeah.
Well, I felt I've worked this in this world in the IT world for almost 20 years. I enjoyed myself most of the time, but at the end I was just like feeling it's time for a change, and basically you only have one life. So I didn't want to have those regrets, and I decided to take the jump, and always with an idea of, at least in the beginning, like I can always go back. Now I feel like I'm already like, what is it, 4 years working professional into wine. It would probably be harder to go back, because IT and technology is a world that evolves so fast. But I also don't want anymore, because I've found some kind of stable ground. I know this is also, I've overcome those challenges, because in the beginning, yes, you feel uncertain. You imposter syndrome, yes, because you meet with other people. You're entering in a world where some people have many years or are born into a world of wine, and I still have, like, if I talk to a winemaker here, I feel like, well, this is a person that grew up in here making wine. His family made wine, so I still feel like somewhat of an outsider. But it's a matter of respect, and a matter of trying to also learn from them. So now I think I'm good with it. I'm enjoying my job. I know it has worked out for me, but it was not easy at the beginning, because you decide to give up, like you say, comfortable living, and things like that. But yeah, I think sometimes you have to just take the jump, because you can be trapped into this golden cage sometimes, where you're in a job that maybe pays very well, but you're not actually enjoying. I was feeling like that a little bit towards the end of my career. Those were some challenges, and I think it's normal to feel this when you're making a career change, and especially because there's a financial aspect involved, right? I mean, in wine, it's not a high-paying business like IT or finance, or at least I haven't found the part of wine where the big bucks are paid yet. But yeah, I mean, you can have a comfortable living at least, and a very and a quality of life. And certainly here, living in Spain, I think that's also been a big factor. The way people live here is very enjoyable. So, looking back, no regrets.
Yeah, which again I think is always the test, isn't it? You know, it's like, okay, yeah, would you have taken a different path, or would you have done that differently? And I like that idea of no regrets. And yeah, I think as well, I've had to overcome those things myself. As you mentioned, I think it's when you're speaking with global wine experts, even as I mentioned this morning, speaking with Sarah Jane Evans, and then she starts sort of going through all of the experience that she has, and I think that's where, for me, I think it helps for me to take a bigger perspective. I've been so surprised when I've looked back at some of the primarily the clients that I've worked with over in the US, and people like New York Wines, which a lot of people in the streets here, they still don't know that they make wine in New York. But you look at their industry, and their contribution to the American economy is something like $14 billion. It's this massive business that obviously that figure is not just in grape sales or just in education. It affects so much more around it. And I'm a firm believer that the reason I mention that in terms of the scale, I feel as though there's actually many places, many positions within that where it's not just about being a wine expert. It's not just about knowing the grapes and knowing the laws. There are all sorts of jobs that are related to wine, or are sort of one standard deviation away from wine. And obviously, having that thriving economy, it needs people with all different sorts of skills. So people who are coming from a technical background, people who are like myself coming from a business psychology background. It's like if you get bitten by the wine bug, I'm sure there is a place, either as you found, in a role, or acting as an independent of your own making. I think it's pretty. It is quite varied world when you're inside it, but from the outside, it probably looks like there's hardly any variety of jobs within wine. But I found quite the opposite. Where I'd transition to now, as we're well into our stride now, I think let's talk a bit more about your day-to-day, really. I know that you're very passionate about helping people discover new wines and gain a deeper understanding of the region and of winemaking in general. So I wonder if you would, in a sense, bring us up to date in terms of your approach to teaching and educating about wine, as you say, leading the program on which you were once enrolled with. And, I guess as well, how all of these things kind of come together to make a positive impact on people's relationships with wine.
Yeah, I think, as I was making the point before, Rioja is a very interesting and in a way grateful, or how should I say it, region to teach about, because there's so many layers to it. You can really talk about the 14 grape varieties. You can talk about the 3 subzones, but even within these subzones, you have a huge variety. You can talk about aspects of altitude, exposure, winemaking styles, classification according to aging, classifications according to origin. So that makes it like a very interesting topic to educate about. The choice that we've made here at Rioja, that's not a choice I made because I inherited this project, but I fully support it, is to build a digital platform where people can, that's self-service, where people can educate themselves. And I think the way that was taught in the beginning, working with a lot of, because it originated from here, but we involved experts in different fields, in different fields of education, in fields of wine itself. It's a platform where you can take online courses, but are fairly interactive. It's not just a textbook you'd read, right? So there are videos, there are like little tests, so that people have, I wouldn't say fun, but at least it's not a boring way of studying. And I think that's the best way to reach the masses, because some people think that all I'm doing here is teaching, but actually the amount of time that I'm in a classroom is very little that I'm actually teaching. Most of my time goes to developing content for the online platform, educational content. When I arrived here, for example, we had our entry-level course was called Rioja Wine Diploma. And Rioja Wine Diploma is a great course if you want to learn about all these details that I just mentioned. But it really is like at the level of a WSET 3, almost, I would say. So you need some kind of background, and you already have to be like into it to get to the Rioja Wine Diploma, and it takes like 15 hours of online study. It's 10 chapters, so it's some kind of commitment. And I was seeing like, well, we kind of started the other way around, because then we also had the educator course. We should really have a course for people that want to learn from scratch. Yeah. So then I developed last year what was called the Rioja Enthusiast course. It's a 4-hour course. Also, the tone of voice is different than the diploma course, which is a bit more serious. The tone of voice in the educator course is a bit more personal, a bit more fun, and that's really aimed at almost at the consumer, at an engaged consumer. Of course, we don't have like the pretensions to reach to every consumer, but anybody that's like where I was in my early days. I wished like a course like Rioja Enthusiast had existed, like just to kind of scratch the surface and get already a little bit into so like what's the difference between a Tempranillo and a Garnacha, and what's this oak aging qualification about, and so on. So yeah, I spend a lot of my day to day on actually that part, and not just developing content, which is one important part, but also just promoting the platform. At the end of the day, I think education is not our main role here at the Consejo, right? It's I work in the marketing department, so in the end, it's a way of promotion. But it's also like promoting the culture of Rioja, what's behind it. So at the end, yes, maybe simplistically saying the aim is to sell more wine, but it's to also help people discover new things, drink better. So I think there's really some value behind it. So that's one part of my day-to-day job, working on this online platform, which I still believe is having room for growth. And I'm working actually on a new course now, which I'm very excited about, which is a actual tasting course. Okay. A bit of a spoiler alert, because it's not launched yet, but that's coming soon. And the other element I'm working on is more the education that we do here on site. So that's geared towards a different profile. So that's more for professionals, and we try to bring professionals here in a program that we call Rioja Camp. So it's a 4-day program where actually we leverage the online platform, because I don't believe in the fact of bringing people to a wine region and sitting them in a classroom. So we ask them to study the theoretical part online first, and then we bring them here, and then we put things into practice. It's aimed at people working in wine education, but also people from the trade, because I think also people selling Spanish wine in general, or even wine in general, having a better understanding of Rioja is also beneficial in explaining it to their customers, or even just discovering new wines in the region and perhaps bringing them into their portfolio. The same for sommeliers, so we also bring some sommeliers here, the same reason, so that they can explain it better to the customers, put some more Riojas on their wine list potentially that they didn't know before, profiles of Riojan wines that they didn't know before. So we take them here, 4-day trip. We visit the 3 sub-regions of Rioja to help them better understand each sub-region, and it's really composed of educational visits. So we visit a lot of wineries, but I ask every winery that I visit, or I try to construct a program where every winery is really doing something a little bit more than a wine tasting. So sometimes we go really in depth on soils. We taste different samples from different soil types. Sometimes we talk about blending components, different grape varieties or different oak types, and we even do blending exercises ourselves. That was something fun we did this year. Then sometimes we do, if the chance permits, a pruning activity in a vineyard to kind of understand why. What's the effect of pruning? Why in Rioja certain varieties are pruned in a different way than others? So really a hands-on experience in Rioja. And the feedback I get every year is like that. Obviously, people had a good time. They loved the program, but that they didn't know Rioja was so diverse and there was so much going on. And that's always like the biggest satisfaction for me, that people go back home with a lot of new knowledge and a lot of enthusiasm about Rioja.
I love it. Yeah, it's nicely laid out there in terms of the online and the presential, the in-person part. And I'm everyone will probably know by this point, I'm a huge proponent of whenever there are events taking place, that I call it the halo period, between people signing up for something and them actually coming through. I mean, obviously, you've got people flying in and having that amazing experience. But I really think that even if it's, I say just, but if it's just a tasting in London, or if it's a tasting in their city, that actually that's such valuable time that that say 5 weeks in between somebody registering for a live experience and actually having it. It's like that I believe there's so much that could be done remotely and online, that exactly as you've just said there, Peter, it's like people, they turn up and they've kind of done the work before. They come knowing all the basics, and it's not a question of if say it's a winemaker at a tasting, the winemaker's not getting asked the same question necessarily 100 times in the day, the sort of all the basics, because people have actually taken the time to kind of have that information, in advance. Yeah,
and I think it works really well to have people come here with the background and then put it into practice, because you can in an online course you can explain like difference between villages, for example. Why this village tastes different than this village, because it's at a higher altitude. The other village is more closer to the river, has more an alluvial soil, so it has a difference in character of ripeness and tannin profile, even if it's 2 times Tempranillo. You can perfectly explain it in an online course, but then when you actually taste it, then is when the light bulb goes off, right? And that's true for a lot of things in wine. I mean, there's nothing that replaces visiting a wine region, seeing it firsthand and tasting the wines. So we try to kind of develop activities that really, how should I say it, bring the theoretical knowledge to life.
Yeah.
If you wish.
Makes sense. It makes sense. And probably just last point on here, because I'm also very curious. I'm almost visualizing almost a triangle here. You've got the online, then you've got the presential for Rioja Camp. I'm curious, is there a connection here with tourism and kind of, I guess, self-funded, self-directed travel? I mean, do you recognize that as a potential kind of conversion almost? I know you said that you're in marketing, you're talking about people buying more wine. Is that something that is either something that you think those courses could lead to, or the people are sort of reporting back and telling you that that was maybe a part of their exploration that started with an online course and maybe led to them wanting to come and visit and have that experience firsthand?
Yeah, so there are a couple of elements there. So in our courses, we touch on the subject of wine tourism, because I think it's very important to Rioja. Last year there were almost 900,000 visitors to the region, which is a lot. It's a hugely beautiful region, actually. I feel very fortunate to live here and just in the weekend go with my bike and go for a bike ride, and you have you have this aspect of altitude. I mean, there's a lot of wine regions in the world, but not all wine regions are equally beautiful.
Yeah.
There's some very flat regions, and I'm not saying that Rioja is the most beautiful wine region in the world. The Douro is fantastic. The Mosel Valley is fantastic. We're lucky as wine lovers to have all these very nice places in the world to visit. But yes, as part of the courses, we promote wine tourism. We definitely talk about it. You have also these historic villages here. If you go to La Guardia or Briones or Briñas, or even in Logroño, is a very nice town or city actually with a great tapas culture. Calle Laurel. Everybody that has been to Rioja or to Logroño will have been here in this famous tapas street.
Yep.
And wineries are developing it really well. There's a lot of improvement that's been made in the last 5 to 10 years. In the past, it was like a standard wine visit, tour of the winery, tasting, but now there's a lot of experiences in the vineyard, in the winery. As a wine lover, you can really have a lot of fun in Rioja, and a lot of people are doing it, and combining it with the north of Spain, because I'm always going to be promoting Spain in general. I think rising tide lifts all boats. I'm not too much into saying like Rioja is the greatest wine region. I love it, but like people coming here do visit the northern part of the Basque Country, go to Bilbao, drink some chacolí, go to San Sebastian. It's a great trip. Discover other parts of Spain. But yeah, getting back to the tourism part. It is important to Rioja. We promote it in our courses. We even have a specialist course on wine tourism, but that's more geared towards the wineries, and the wineries like it very much. So that's also something that I'm actually happy that when a winery hires a new person to work in wine tourism, oftentimes they ask as a prerequisite to take this course on the Rioja Wine Academy, or maybe the person has already done it and puts it on its CV, and that's kind of something that's giving them some extra credit in their application project, because that course is really geared towards people that want to work in wine tourism, and giving some best practices also on how to develop wine tourism activities. So there is indeed, as you say, a bit of a crossover point between education and wine tourism. And then we have like our official educators that come on this on-site program, that teach about Rioja, and they also promote wine tourism, and sometimes they even organize study trips to Rioja. So they bring their people here. Yeah. So yes, there is this kind of cross-fertilization between both things, and that's great to see. In Rioja, we have 600 wineries, 204. So let's round it to 200. So 1/3 is actually open to the public. So like I said, you can easily spend a week in Rioja, and you won't be bored.
Yeah. No, it's again, that's been certainly my experience. Yeah, all those little towns and villages, and they really are beautiful. Even all around the year as well. I've found. I think there's something to kind of appreciate. So I think really, as we kind of move towards closing, I'm always a fan of sort of really opening out the conversation, and I know you've spoken and it sort of shone through really, valuing the importance of communicating wine as more than just an alcoholic drink. Obviously, as we've just sort of discussed there, and you've discussed your influences, things like culture and place and history and tradition. So I guess it's more, if you like, a question really more about that longer impact, I guess, that you hope your work there in Rioja can kind of bring, and maybe the influences and ripples that you kind of hope it can go out there and continue to contribute to that broader purpose.
Yeah, I guess I mentioned that because I think there's a bit of we're in a difficult environment to wine, and wine is sometimes looked upon as an alcoholic drink. I mean, if you have wine without culture, without history, without geography, then it becomes an alcoholic drink. But I think there's so much behind wine, and of course. It's important to drink it in moderation. I think wine is part of should be more looked at as a food product and something that you enjoy with a meal, and that you look at it in this way. And I think that's also part of communicating about wine to understand all these depths that it helps you understand also cultures, regions. In Rioja, wine is hugely important, and we're celebrating our 100-year anniversary next year, but Actually, that's just the official part. The DO was indeed created in 1925, but wine has been made here long before, and it's hugely important to the region. It's if you count on all the everything related to wine here in Rioja, because there's also people making barrels and capsules and what have you. So there's a whole industry, peripheral industry around wine. It's about 20% of the GDP of the region, wine. So that's huge. People working in farming, there's a huge problem in Spain about younger generation willing to farm the land, not just in Rioja, in I think even beyond Spain. But like having all these values and that you're creating something out of it. I remember once speaking to, and I think that was just thinking about this now, beautiful anecdote on when I was talking to a Belgian wine grower. He was actually growing pears before, and he told me like, I mean, he said, I liked growing pears, but at the end of the year, of the day, you harvest your pears and they go to the market, and that's the end of it. You don't have like. When with wine, I grow grapes, but I can make something out of it. I can make a final product, and I can see customers enjoy it. I can see them enjoy my wine. So it's adding a value there, and that's also something I try to promote, because in the end, I don't want to be too pretentious about wine and education. And at the end, we're not solving world peace. We're not solving curing any kind of diseases. So. But yes, we are bringing some culture, some joy, something that adds some values in people's lives. So that's a bit my way of looking at things.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. You know, I think in arguably, you know, there's a point to say, because I know we have issues over here in the UK with pubs closing and that sort of almost like that third space, where people can connect and where community is built and friendships are made, and it's almost like that. If it is curing a disease, call it lack of community disease or loneliness, or there is a lot that wine really does. And I still think though it's in that interesting place where of course it's got most wine does have alcohol, but it's always felt to me as though it's sort of got in a way a kind of a self-moderating effect kind of almost built in. I don't think if anyone out there is sort of drinking just to get drunk, I don't think that wine is necessarily going to be top of their choice. It's always felt it's got something special about it, some slightly different energy where it does encourage you to kind of think and talk and want to eat and just sort of communicate, I think in a way that's very special as a culture underpinning what is also a delicious drink in many occasions as well. So really, finally, I understand two things really in closing. I understand you have a great opportunity to share with the listeners, for them to kind of learn more independently. So please do plug and talk about the free course that I believe they can sign up for through the Rioja Wine Academy. And then in short, just any other final thoughts that you'd like to share on the back of that.
Well, thank you for letting me make that plug. I already talked about it actually. So we have a free online portal. It's riojawineacademy.com. You can create an account, doesn't cost anything. You can take all of the courses all the way from Rioja Enthusiast, Diploma, and people interested in wine education can apply for the educator course. That's just a few editions we have each year that we open up as they become available. But yes, the courses are available in English, Spanish, and even Chinese, if there are any people from those markets listening. And you get an official certification at the end. So you do have to pass a test at the end, but we issue a nice digital certification that you can automatically add to your LinkedIn profile, to your CV. So you can also actually use it professionally, besides just learning and getting more educated about Rioja. I think wine education is something that opens a lot of doors. I've benefited from it myself. I'm happy to be into it. I think a lot of your listeners are also educating themselves. I think the WSET program is a great program to kind of get a global view. And then there are great regional programs like we offer, but there are others as well. So I do think that as Rioja, we are in this unique position to have a lot to talk about, and I hope that people start to think more to think about Rioja more than like something that's classically in some outdated wine education. Rioja is sometimes pigeonholed as kind of red wine, Tempranillo, aged in American oak, and Rioja has really evolved. There's so much exciting wines, young producers. It's amazing. Like every a couple of months, I discover a new young producer that's starting out. Now there's a new association which is called Menudas Bodegas. All producers making just 5,000 bottles, just starting out. So it's very dynamic, and it deserves some further attention.
A huge thanks to today's guest, Peter Arijs, Education and Global Projects Manager at Rioja Wine. As Peter mentioned, make sure you visit riojawineacademy.com, link below, where you can learn more and sign up for a free course. Next time on Interpreting Wine, Mosaic of Wine, Series 1, in episode 568, I'll be speaking with Amber Gardner, wine consultant and writer. Subscribe to be alerted when that episode goes live. See you then.